Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're diving into something pretty incredible happening in Singapore. It's a brand new solution for a critical shortage of donated eggs. Now, this is a story about hope, it's about generosity, but as you're going to see, it's also packed with some serious hidden risks that we really need to talk about.
Okay, so here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll look at the massive promise of this new approach. Then, we'll get into the tricky conflicts of interest that pop up and the hidden dangers for the donors themselves. And finally, we'll explore what it might take to build a system that's actually ethical for everyone involved.
All right, let's start with the problem at the heart of all this. It's a really painful shortage that affects so many hopeful parents in Singapore.
Yeah, for years, this shortage has been a huge roadblock for people trying to start a family. But then, a new law in 2023 changed everything by allowing elective egg freezing. And just like that, a whole new potential source of donated eggs opened up. And the scale of this, well, it's pretty staggering.
And this is where you really see just how big this opportunity is. If you look at data from places like Australia, a whopping 80% of women who freeze their eggs for social reasons never actually end up using them. That creates this massive potential surplus.
And get this, studies from around the world suggest that about a quarter of those women decide to donate their unused eggs. I mean, that is a total game changer for patients who are waiting. So, on the surface, it looks like this perfect win-win solution, right? Well, it's not quite that simple. There's a pretty serious conflict brewing just beneath the surface.
So where's the catch? Well, it all comes down to who's managing this whole process. The for-profit fertility clinics.
And here's the fundamental conflict, right here. On one hand, you have the patient, the donor. She needs to make this incredibly personal decision, completely free from any pressure. But on the other hand, the clinic has a direct financial incentive. They make more money from every single donation that goes through, and, well, those two interests don't always line up.
This is where things get really murky. Think about the trust between a doctor and their patient. That relationship could be misused. It's not hard for a clinic to kind of sugarcoat the whole process, you know? They can really play up that feel-good factor of helping another family while subtly pushing a former patient towards a decision that's actually better for the clinic's bottom line.
You can see how this could play out. A clinic could convince a woman to make this incredibly generous donation. Then, they could take that single gift, split it up into smaller batches, and give those out to multiple different recipients. Why? Because they get to charge medical fees for every single one of those procedures. It maximizes their profit, but it could seriously lower the chances of success for each recipient who's only getting a small number of eggs.
And here's the really concerning part. This whole conflict of interest creates some major risks for the donor herself, risks that she might not ever be fully warned about.
Okay, so what about paying donors? This is a huge debate. On one side, people argue it's just a fair refund. The woman already spent a ton of money to freeze her eggs in the first place. But the other side says, hold on. This payment is basically a financial pressure tactic. It could exploit someone who's emotionally vulnerable, pushing them to just get their money back instead of making a truly clear-headed choice they won't regret later. And if you start allowing payments, you risk creating what is essentially a market, where eggs are valued based on certain traits. We've seen it happen in other countries, eggs from East Asian donors fetching higher prices. And you can imagine where that leads. Pretty soon, their preferences for high test scores, university degrees, or specific looks. You end up in some very troubling ethical territory, with real accusations of discrimination.
For decades, anonymity was the absolute bedrock of egg donation. It gave donors peace of mind. But let's be real. In the age of the internet and consumer DNA tests, what does anonymity even mean anymore?
The truth is, it's pretty much gone. A donor might never take a DNA test herself, but what if her second cousin does and uploads the results to a genealogy website? That's all it could take for a child conceived from her donation to trace their biological roots right back to her. It could lead to a knock on the door completely out of the blue, decades down the line.
And then there's an even more startling risk, something called genetic sexual attraction, or GSA. It's a widely reported phenomenon where close relatives who were separated at birth, like half-siblings, feel this intense, often confusing sexual attraction if they meet for the first time as adults. In a small, dense place like Singapore, this really increases the risk of accidental incest between a donor's own children and the children conceived from her donation.
So with all these complex and, frankly, pretty serious risks on the table, how in the world do you design a system that actually helps people without harming them? Well, the source material we looked at lays out some key safeguards to protect everyone.
The proposed fixes really boil down to two big ideas. Take the profit motive out of it and give the donor all the information she needs. To kill the profit motive, you'd ban clinics from controlling the eggs and set up a government-run registry instead. That ensures fairness. And you'd make it a rule that one donor's entire batch of eggs goes to one recipient to give them the best possible chance. Then, to protect the donor, you'd limit how much personal info is shared and, this is crucial, you'd require serious psychological counseling on all these modern risks we just talked about, from the end of anonymity to GSA. The whole point is simple: put people before profits.
And that really is the question we're left with, isn't it? It's not just about what this amazing technology can do. It's about our fundamental responsibility to use it wisely, ethically, and with a whole lot of compassion for every single person who is part of this incredible journey. Thanks for joining me.